welcome back to easypeasyart.com. I changed my front garden from grass into a flower garden, and I wanted stepping stones and I couldn't find any locally, so I decided to make my own out of concrete, and the mold I used was just dollar store plates, plastic plates. The colours I'm using are just odds and ends I have left over. Any blues will do the trick. It's been a long hot summer. I had so many plans to record videos and just never got to it. Got outside and was enjoying the sunshine too much. One of the first projects I did was change my cat pen, because I only have a little fat Burmese left and she doesn't really go far. And I turned it into a greenhouse. I was a little bit dubious in the beginning, but I've always wanted a greenhouse, and I really enjoyed it this summer. Right next to the greenhouse, I had dumped a birdhouse that somebody had given me. It sits on a piece of branch. And it was just, I'd plonked it there. I didn't know where to put it. It wasn't attached to anything. It was really just laying there, but sort of laying up against the greenhouse. Well, the cat pen back then. And I noticed when we were doing the greenhouse that the chickadees had started nesting in this little nest box. So I had these little chickadees feeding their babies right outside the door of my greenhouse all summer. I did secure it. As soon as the greenhouse was built, I secured it so it wouldn't blow over and what have you. And then I went out shopping one day and came back and they'd all flown the nest, and I never saw the babies again. The parents, well, I don't know how long chickadees last, but chickadees come and roost every night in the nest boxes I have scattered around the garden. I also picked up a baby crow this summer. We had a terrible heat wave. I think it was the end of June, beginning of July. It was stinking hot. And I think these crows were like about 2 weeks too early at the nest, because the nest was right up at the top of the tree where the sun was baking down on it. So yeah, I was out and about and I came across this crow in the middle of the roadway. So I grabbed it and moved it off to the side of the road. The parents were squawking around me and it was so hot. It was just kind of like unbearable to get out the car and walk across the road. So anyway, I just put it up. There was like a pole. I put it up on this pole and left. And a little bit later, I came back to check on them. And there were actually 4 of them. There was one already squished on the road that I'd seen earlier that day. And there were 4 under this bush. So I left them some water and went home and fretted the whole night. I just couldn't sleep, tossed and turned all night. And went back the next day. And there were only 2 left. One was stuck on behind like a farmer's field. And the one, which I think I'd picked up the day before, was sitting under the bush still. So I picked it up and brought it home. And then there's a big panic. Okay, now what do I feed this thing? Dashed out to the pet store, got worms, and of course that doesn't go down very well because I was so petrified of these squiggly worms. But it turned out you shouldn't feed baby crows worms anyway. Cat food, either pate cat food or the kibbles, but you need to soak the kibbles in water. And I think I had him for about 4 weeks, feeding every 2 hours. And in the summer, I mean, it gets light at 4:15, and it gets dark at about 10:15 at night. So it was a long day, but it was worth every moment. What a nice bird, so affectionate. It took him about 3 days for him to get used to me feeding him. And after that, it was a breeze. He would just come and eat his food. And I kept him in the greenhouse. It was still very hot though, so during the day I sometimes brought him into my bathroom. I have a bathroom that was built to bath a dog in it, so I can just spray all over the place. So I would just bring him in during the day and then spray it and bleach it when he went back out in the evening. Often I would stop back there where I picked him up, and every time I stopped there, the parents would come on over, yapping at me. I never saw another baby. The day before I released him, I actually stopped there, waited and waited, because as soon as I saw my car, they would come for miles, squawk, 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 squawking at me. But that day there was absolutely nothing, not a crow in sight, and I was in a bit of a panic because crows need each other. They get eaten by eagles, if they don't have the protection of each other. And they can also get harassed by local pairs. But as where I picked him up from, for me to drive is about 10 minutes, but for them to fly on over is only going to take about 2 minutes. Anyway, I sat there and nothing. So I got in the car and drove home. When I got home, there was a pair of crows in the tree in my garden. And they were persistent. They were dive bombing me, performing, screeching from dawn till dusk. So the next morning, I did make a bit of a mistake. I should have just opened the door and let them out and let him come out on his own, but I actually took him out. So it was quite a stressful morning for him. He flapped around all over the place. He did sort of go up in a tree just a little ways from me with the pair, but they didn't get that close. And then he soon came home and he was exhausted from flying around. He just wasn't used to it. So that night I put him back in the greenhouse, and the next morning, 4:15, the pair up in the tree were squawking their heads off. I got up and opened the greenhouse and just left the door open and just kept a low profile. Because when I went out there, the parents were swooping me all the time. I assume it was his parents. Well, the pair was swooping at me the whole time. So I was just about to go out and sort of give up because he just wasn't coming out. But at about 9 o'clock, he flew out of the cage, went up into the tree. The pair were feeding him, and off they went. And I just have to assume that all is good. And that was his parents. He did try to sort of come back to me at one stage, but the parents were not happy about it at all. So I just kept a low profile for the rest of the day. Of course, every time I go out now, I'm looking at the crows, wondering. I've actually stopped once, and they tend to gather in big groups. And the one did come on hopping over to the tree that I was under and came quite close and was doing that bobbing and squawking at me. So who knows? The crow is a crow is a crow. Anyway, if you've lasted this long, thank you for watching. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.